You all come from very different parts of the state. You deal with a lot of different issues. And so to give them an idea of what your day-to-day is like as superintendents, how about you each start with your biggest challenge right now in your school district? And we'll start with you, Tom.
Well, I mean, I think our biggest challenge really it's meeting the waiting list of students who are applying to get in. Last year we had about 70,000 students, 70,000 students from around Texas to apply to get into one of our schools. We've got about 45,000 students here in Texas, about 1,000 in Louisiana. And we literally cannot build schools fast enough to meet the demand. You know, most of our students come from low-income homes, 89%. Most of our students are minority, 92% Latino. And what we have found is that when you can have a compelling vision for parents of where you can take them in terms of getting into college and through college and follow them all the way through their first job out of college and make sure that they land on their feet, that there's just a real pent-up demand for that. So, and then all of the challenges that go with meeting the needs of that many new students every year. You know, we've got to hire great teachers and build buildings, et cetera. So I think that's really what our focus has been over the past couple of years, certainly.
Yeah. With you, LaTonya.
Thank you, Claire. That's a really good question. I'm new to Aldine. I started July 1st. And prior to Aldine, I've served in Lufkin, and then I also served in Cold Spring, but I'm beginning my 11th year as a superintendent. And what I can tell you is, if it wasn't for education, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so as we think about the biggest challenge is just making sure that we're able to meet students' needs. In public schools, the beauty of it is that we educate all. We educate special ed children. I have had a special ed kiddo to GT children. And so we've got to be able to meet those needs and meet them where they are while also providing the education. We have to be able to provide them with support, whether that's social emotional support. And we've also, you know, I think about the small school that I went to, we're having to deal with choice. And my situation, I went to the school that my grandmother said I was going to go to. It was our local school. There was no choice. That's the school I went to. And so while meeting the needs of our diverse population, meeting the social needs of our diverse population, we've also have to provide choice because we have parents who are out there searching for the very best for their children. And so as we work to create different choices and work to create different opportunities for our children, we also have to guarantee that they're going to graduate with choice. Because it's one thing to have a choice in your pre-K-12 experience, but they have to graduate and have choices and opportunities, which is what public schools did for me. So I would say that was our biggest challenge.
So first I want to take in the actual scene, because it's incredible to think that I started as a field worker and I'm sitting here at a panel trying to influence where we go next and the importance of educating the most important asset that we have in the state of Texas. And so the American dream is real for me, and I want to make certain that the American dream is alive and well for all children in the state of Texas, and especially HCISD. So having said that, I think that I wanted to provide a little bit of context so that you know our greatest challenge. And so I think that, you know, coupled with what LaTonya said, which is very similar to our challenges, I would think that two of the greatest challenges in HCISD center around literacy and the importance of literacy. And so while we always champion the fact that all professions are made possible by the very teachers who do the heavy lifting in our classrooms throughout the state of Texas, it's also true that literacy is a foundational skill that all children need. And in order to attain the American dream, you need to be able to read. And so our greatest challenge is to ensure that all students are able to read and comprehend what they read by the time they get to the 3rd grade. The rest of it will solve itself. Second biggest challenge is to find a very delicate balance between a high-stakes test and what the workforce is asking and demanding of public school children and our system. We must make certain that we don't miss the mark, but yet not overcorrect, and ensure that our kids are going to be college, career, and community ready, because contrary to popular belief, all the children in the state of Texas will come into our communities, mine and yours. And so the question is, what does community ready look like? What does it look like? And what do our systems and structures need to be like to accomplish that goal?
Okay.
I'm from Roscoe, Texas. I grew up there, and actually I'm really a farmer and a rancher disguised as an educator. My family's been farming there since 1917, and so I've seen a lot of change in rural. Many refer to it as the rural dilemma, where our best and brightest have been leaving, never to return. Going to more urban and suburban areas. So ours is a model to really not just education, but a focus on rural economic development and a lot of collaboration. We're a school-wide early college and a STEM academy. We're part of the TASA School Transformation Network and working on community-based accountability systems. In Roscoe, we've arrived at 3 things that our community values for students. We want college degrees, symbolic of college readiness, STEM workforce certification, symbolic of workforce readiness, and student research, symbolic of lifetime learners to prepare students for careers that don't exist today. A lot of the rural challenge, minimal resources lead to lower expectations, so we're trying to develop a model for high expectations for all students. The expectation is to complete the associate degree before you graduate high school. Now we're working with the Texas A&M system to design support beyond grade 12. The traditional support system beyond grade 12 is parents and money, and as you know in this audience, that's a declining population that enjoys that, and so how to create it really extend the support system upward through the graduate degree. We're trying to use P-TECH funding to create non-traditional support systems for non-traditional students so that we can have 90% plus completion of bachelor's and graduate degrees and in STEM workforce shortage areas. And we've learned that there's power in collaboration, and so ours is a very collaborative model with higher education and workforce, and it's a work in progress.
Well, and so you bring up a really interesting point from being from a rural community, and Art, you were kind of telling me about this before we came up here. You guys are in a position of you want to prepare your kids for the world, but then bring them back to your community. And so what are some of the things you're doing to achieve that? And you guys might be as well, so I'd like you to chime in, but let's start with you two. Trying to achieve that goal of helping them be prepared and stay in the community, or prepare them for life in your part of Texas.
That's what we have a lot of support from numerous support mechanisms that collect a lot of data. Educate Texas has been a strong supporter of it, and we know that regional workforce shortage in our area is rural human health care, the #1, and then also engineering in every part of the state. So we're one of the first things. We have a mixed animal veterinary clinic to provide students exposure to health practices, realizing that a lot of those students will end up in human health care as a result of that exposure in our biomedical strand. And then while we're in the process of that, we're trying to create jobs with these STEM. We're trying to create 6 DVM jobs in our in EduVet, in the vet tech jobs that go with it. We've also got EduWeld and a lot of welding opportunity out in our area, EduDrone for commercial drone pilots, EduMaker for 3D printing, and Edu whatever else we can think of. It's just, we're kind of using that district of innovation, just make it up as we go with the kind of the philosophy, it's easier to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
So let's focus on that. Ask for forgiveness later. No, just kidding. So one of the things that I think that we do to try and entice our students to stay with us is first to develop a strong sense of community in Harlingen. And so the public school systems were designed to do just that, and to create a sense of community and to create a sense of ownership of the betterment for the community. And so how do you do that? And so one of the things that we pride ourselves in is to create real meaningful partnerships. that include bringing people into our school systems to push the system to get better, to prepare students to enter the workforce, and to ensure that students have opportunities to be in the front of the line of those opportunities. We partner with our local hospitals to create an LVN program. We've partnered with the local University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, to create a high school to medical school program. We recognize that we're a big health industry in Harlingen, and so we have our own medical high school, and the purpose of that is to emulate what's happening in the community. Contrary to what people might think, hospitals only have about 10% of doctors, and the reality is everybody else is running the hospitals, and so all levels of partnerships and all levels of job skills and job placements are available there. We also partner with big companies and small companies in our community. If you follow what we're doing in Harlingen CISD, we are transforming our public school system into academies, following the next generation learning Ford model, which does deep dives into the workforce demands and then puts kids in pathways to access those jobs. I was on the plane coming back from Philadelphia. I was over there at a conference, and in coming back, I got a call from our U.S. congressman, and he said, "Hey, Art, there's a company out of the Valley that's needing 300 welders within the next 2 years." He said, "I have a question for you. Do you have a welding program?" I said, "I will if you send me fund." No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. I'm kidding. And are we being video streamed? Okay, I'm kidding. So anyway, what I said is that we had seen the signal 3 years ago, and we actually have one at each one of our comprehensive high schools, and kids are signing up for that. What we need is a link to the job market. And let me tell you that while we might not think that those kind of skill-ready jobs and opportunities are not meaningful, the reality is that our kids, as they move through the journey of life, we see it as on-ramp and off-ramps. And kids have to have meaningful job opportunities when they leave our high schools so that they can persist and that the grit be real. And only through those authentic learning experiences do kids really understand what collaboration and teamwork and critical thinking and creativity looks like, and what it looks like in the school setting and then in the job market. And make no mistake, the workforce industry is very clear that life is not a multiple choice test. Just kidding. Okay, I'm gonna move on. But I will say that there has to be a delicate balance between all systems of what we're trying to put in place.
And just as Art was saying, we're working to increase those partnerships. In Houston, it's a very vast opportunities, and ironically enough, prior to leaving for Philadelphia, I was in a meeting with Goodman Manufacturing. It's a new manufacturing company that's opening up outside of Waller. And Spring ISD Soup and I were meeting with him, and he was one of the hiring talent managers, and he said he needed 1,500 specific skill set individuals, and he doesn't have the workforce. And he asked, what can we do to at least tap into what you all offer in your areas? And we both decided, and we've had many conversations, that we can't wait until the senior year when they're about to graduate. We've got to start earlier. And one of the programs that they have is an opportunity to come and an internship during the summer. And we kind of talked about the application process or whatever. In our district, though, we can talk about it, we can put up flyers about it, but we have to do something. And so I said, okay, so how many spots are you gonna give Aldine? He told me how many spots he's gonna give Aldine, and so immediately we began to work on how do we remove those boundaries. With 89% low SES, our students don't have cars to drive the 35 minutes. So I asked, will you be willing to provide the busing? Pay for the busing if we bus the students over there once they qualify? Absolutely. And I tell you all of that to say that we have to have conversations, and then after the conversations, we've got to say, what are we going to do? You know, we keep talking about the fact that our kids aren't graduating with the soft skills that are necessary, but we need the workforce to come in, and we've been having those conversations in Houston, not only at middle school and high school level, but also coming in at career days and doing those different things, but also having real world experiences, because a lot of our students don't know what it looks like. They don't know that welding, what it looks like to me or what it looks like to you is totally different when you get out there and the different opportunities for our children.
Well, I have a question for you. Being the superintendent of such a large school district, that's one conversation you had with one company. Not every kid is going to want to go into, when you have tens of thousands, that particular job. And so what's the challenge you face on making sure you have enough opportunities for everything kids might be interested in?
It's a blessing because we basically just had opened a school. It's called CTE Blanton. So the entire school is about providing kids with opportunities to become workforce ready while also potentially getting an associate's degree or so on and so forth, but pursuing what they want to accomplish. In addition, we're about to open up a P-Tech school, which we're having a shortage. I stole one out of Dr. Hinojosa's playbook. We're having trouble attracting and retaining bilingual teachers. So we're going to train our own. And so through our system of preparing students for the job force, but one of the job forces for us that we're having trouble on our own is education for bilingual teachers. So we're going to be growing those. So we're doing a lot of different things and providing different choices at our different high schools. We have, with House Bill 5, we have all the different pathways and different things at every high school. In addition, just going to those meetings and meeting with the junior colleges, and Lone Star is a wonderful partner, and being willing to take advantage of those opportunities.
And then Tom, talk about your guys' approach to life post K-12 world, because you're in a different situation than these traditional public school superintendents.
Well, I mean, if I can just frame it for the problem or the challenge that we're trying to solve, and this may have come up this morning in some of the earlier panels, but if you are a low-income child in America today, you have an 11% chance of graduating with a 4-year degree. This table of 9 people right here, if you were all from a low-income family, one of you is making it through college. If you're from an upper income quartile family, your family's making $100,000 a year or more, that puts you in the top 25 percentile, you have a 77% chance of graduating college. And if you start college on the first day of your freshman year, that goes up to 98% according to UPenn. I mean, just think about it. What do you want for your children? A 98% chance of success or an 11% chance? So this was the dilemma that I faced when I was a 24-year-old teacher down in the Rio Grande Valley, and I thought, what are we going to do to be able to solve this? And thankfully, you know, policy matters, and there was a policy in place for us to be able to cut through the red tape, the bureaucracy, and start a school with a single-minded mission that every single child, every kid from a low-income home was going to be prepared for success at a 4-year college university, and everything we do is about that. So that means making sure that we turbocharge reading from kindergarten. That makes sure making sure that every single kid is graduating with at least, at a minimum, 11 AP courses over their senior year. And that is our lowest performing kid, 11 AP courses. That also means that all of our juniors are doing a summer away program at a 4-year college university so they can try out small schools, big schools, that sort of thing. It also means starting when they're in 6th grade, we have them visit nearly 50 colleges and universities across the country and around the state of Texas, just so that they see themselves, yeah, I belong at a college, I belong at a university. And then we work on, okay, and by the way, it's not just about getting in. You got to go there, you got to succeed. So it's a lot about hard work too. But it just, the inspiration piece is so key. I mean, it's not just about the curriculum or the metrics or the numbers, but like we got to get kids motivated and inspired. And if you're living in a neighborhood where you don't know any of your friends or any of your relatives who have gone off to college, we have to make it real for them. I really feel like we are dealers in hope. And our job is to spread that hope and spread that inspiration around to the kids, but also to their families. So now our big challenge, okay, now they're off to college. Well, gosh, we got to make sure they're succeeding. We're not at the 77% rate. You know, we're in the high 50s for our most recent graduating class that has at least 6 years of data there. But I do think this is a solvable problem. And what we are trying to show is this is not a kid problem. This is not a parent problem. This is an adults in the system problem. When leadership and teachers get it right, our kids in Texas can compete and they can go toe-to-toe with anybody around the globe. And when the adults don't get it right, then we see things like what we have in Travis County, which is not even an 11% success rate, but a 6% success rate for low-income kids. We can do better than that. We can do better as a county, and we can do a lot better as the state of Texas, I think.
So they all mentioned things they're doing having to do with CTE stuff, and you mentioned college. And so do you guys focus on kids who want to do the non-4-year or the non-community college route?
Well, since we get kids at 4 years old and 5 years old, we just are working with them and their families so much on college. But of course we have students who their junior and senior year decide that a traditional 4-year school is not for them. We also have a large percentage of special education students, some with really severe needs, and we need to find better placements for them as well. So we've got the same diversity of students that all districts have, but the difference is with our single-minded approach. I think the challenge is making sure that every child has a pathway to actually achieve that college success.
Great. So I want to talk, kind of rewind a little bit, something we talked about at the beginning with your greatest challenges. Let's talk about the choice and competition component schools are facing. And then, Tom, you have the unique problem of we can't keep up, but that also brings its own challenges. And so, I don't know, who wants to start with what you're doing to stay competitive or attract students to stay in either their neighborhood schools or make a different choice and come to a public charter school? Because I think it's really interesting to see what different superintendents and districts do to say we're the best option for your family. So who wants to start with that?
It's ironic that you said that. When I was in Lufkin, that's what we said, that in Lufkin, our boundaries, we wanted to be the best choice for all students who reside in those boundaries. And so we worked with the local college, Angelina College, to start an early college high school. We also worked with the local university, SFA, to start a STEM academy. And we created different choices so that we could make sure that those parents who are looking for different unique experiences, they could have them in our public schools. And that's exactly what we're doing where we are now. We actually have a partnership with Yes Prep, and we have IB schools, and we have different choices and for our students. But we want to also make sure that we do it with fidelity, and that we make sure that our students, we can, again, I can't say this enough, you can have all these different choices while you're in school, but the main focus is to make sure they graduate with different choices, and that's the goal.
Yeah, so I'll dovetail on that. I think that one is to provide authentic learning experiences and opportunities for all children. And so while Tom says that our demographics are very similar, in fact they are, but our challenges may be very different. And the difference is that when we have a school system that we begin to look at what is it that this community best needs, and what does a strategic plan call for? What is it that we're trying to transform our public school systems to? And so when you kind of do a deep dive there, as you look at the matrix, some things are very simple. And so the data is very clear. Your business and industry has been yelling at the mountaintop. The college degree is not the answer for all. And which, as you heard Tom say, that is correct. It's not. His program is a single focus on that, which is fine. In the public school systems, in our school system, we want to be more diverse. I believe, and I strongly believe, that there is a lot of value and significant value in teaching kids how to be creative, how to collaborate with one another, how to think critically, and how to really communicate effectively. Look, that doesn't just happen because you say it. It happens because you put systems and structures in place. And so in Harlingen, we say, come and experience our schools, because we believe that if you create systems and structures that really focus on those fundamental skills and add commitment and literacy, you're not going to know where the next CEO is coming from. There are things that are happening and things that are being created from non-college graduates. While I believe I am a product of a college, and my parents believed that that was important, but I have individuals in my own family which a skill was also critical. And it's not about a dead-end job and an end to all. The reality is this, is that as students leave our safe haven as a school system, they move into K-12, into post-secondary, and life gets in the way. And so the question is, can they deal with adversity? How do they learn to pivot when something doesn't go right? How do they learn to understand that business and industry needs people to collaborate? And look, it's rare that there are companies out there that say those skills are not needed. And so in Harlingen, we believe the arts is an incredible engine to allow for that. I'm proud to say that it was in the one-act play 6A division that Harlingen brought home a state championship. And when you say, well, how many kids were involved? I look at it this way: it broke a glass ceiling of what is possible. And the arts allowed that space to be created and that pressure for change to be allowed. And so we have Fine Arts Academy, and we have middle school systems, speech, drama, and debate. And let me tell you something. Those kids can debate. Because I have them in my advisory board. And they're coming here to the Capitol and to meet with some of the legislators. I'm giving you a forewarning. No, just kidding. But here, in all seriousness, is this. I think all of us have a mission. And all of us have something that drives us. And what drives me is this, is that if kids are going to be community ready, it looks different for a lot of kids. And while we know that kids enter college, I'm not proud to say what my success rate is. We're above the state, but the state is at almost 21%, finishing 6 years later. And the question is, where are those children going when they've incurred debt and when they haven't persisted? And so it's our responsibility as adults to champion that work. And so it gives me a moment to say this. I want to thank our governor for focusing on the importance of literacy and pre-K. I want to thank the legislators for showing up every day to try and solve this complex issue. And I want to thank my board of trustees because I get evaluated next month. I'm kidding. I saw somebody nodding off. I had to throw that in. So I also want to thank my teachers, who I said earlier, they're the ones doing the heavy lifting. And it's they that we expect to make everything possible. And look, somebody did the heavy lifting for us, and it's our turn to get it right as adults, because these children are going to inherit our world with problems that we have not solved. They're not going to inherit it yet, don't worry. But when they inherit it, we want to make certain that they can persist, they have grit, they can collaborate, they can communicate, they can commit to what they want to do, and we can get it right. The state of Texas can get it right, and I have the highest hopes because we are all products of the American dream. So I appreciate you listening and not nodding off. Okay, so you're
and then Tom, let's circle back to this original question of being competitive, and you don't just go to the school down the street anymore in many communities. Parents have choices. And so what are you guys offering and doing that has this huge wait list that we're seeing?
I mean, this is, well, I mean, I think it's, I mean, it's a lot of things. I think this is where we're heading. I mean, this is where we are, actually. I mean, you all have your favorite shows that you love to watch. You don't care if it's on Netflix, if it's on HBO Go, if it's network television, if you're watching it on Amazon Prime. Like, you want the best shows, you want the best quality, you want the best content. Now, I'm sure if you had all of the executives of those companies up here, they would all try to tell you why their delivery method is the best. But ultimately, I mean, you want high quality content. This is the same thing for parents. They want high quality outcomes. And it's not even like families need a choice. Families need a choice for their different children. I mean, it may be that a comprehensive high school works good for him. It may be that an art school is better for her. It might be that for your youngest child who has a hard time concentrating or focusing, there's a different sort of option out there. So I mean, my kids go to our schools. But if I felt like, you know, my 13 and my 7 and my 10-year-old weren't being well served, then I would be like, okay, let me find a different environment for them. But it really is this. This false narrative that it's like districts versus charters. It's actually the young people of Texas have to compete against all of our country's young people, and really globally. We've got a couple of students right now at Grinnell College. The year they applied to Grinnell College, 10% of the freshman applicant class were from China, and half of them had perfect scores in the math section of their SAT. So, I mean, it really is global competitiveness that we need to make sure we're able to experience right now. And you know, we've had wonderful partnerships with districts. You know, there was a district down in the Rio Grande Valley, Far San Juan Alamo. They said, hey, you guys are getting great outcomes. You've got something figured out about teacher training and principal preparation. Why don't we partner with that? So Danny King and I went out, raised a couple of $1 million, and we got a great program, and we were able to improve our program, they were able to improve ours, and ultimately, kids won. Midland ISD right now has been under the threat of takeover, and one of the ways they've been able to avoid that is partnering with us to take over and operate their lowest performing school that for 5, 10, 15 years has been underperforming. Like, nobody in this room would put your children or your grandchildren or your nieces or your nephews, your loved ones, in these schools that have been dropout factories. And thanks to legislation, they are now able to partner with us. And look, I don't care if they have a Midland ISD moniker or an Idea Public Schools moniker. We just want to get more kids to and through college. So I think that there's wonderful opportunities for cooperation, not just competition.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of legislation, and we're at a Texas Tribune panel, there's a lot going on this year with, in both chambers, with legislation on school funding and some other components. I'm curious for each of you, what are you keeping your, you know, I'm here in Austin, they care about recapture, but I'm curious what you all are keeping your eyes on that's going to impact you the greatest. Is it, you know, the teacher merit pay? Is it just funding, general funding? You know, what are the things that are most important to you for your community if we saw some changes?
Well, I'll take a crack at it. Obviously, you know, you get what you pay for in education, and you know, it's a whole lot cheaper to just give a multiple choice test. And if you really dig down deep, though, and look what are the skills that these students are going to need. You know, they're going to need to be exposed to workforce and paid student apprenticeships and opportunities to work with employees, with employers to solve real-world problems. And so the design is expensive, and I'm optimistic that one thing that will come out of a funding bill, whatever that looks like at the end of the day, I think there's going to be additional funding for innovation to implement things that, you know, some people would say college or career readiness. We used to say that, and now we say college readiness is career readiness. And so as we think about these collaborations, one that comes to mind that creates cost effectiveness in an expensive environment down in the Coastal Bend area, a collaboration of STEM academies, Fremont and Falfurrias and Freer, where they're working together, where they each have a unique STEM opportunity and they co-op students. And so they're really not competing for students, they're working collaboratively to increase student outcomes. And you know, I think that's the approach that we're taking there in Roscoe, and there are all kinds of really good models and they're different, but I choose to think of it collaboratively. And obviously to maximize funding, you know, ISDs were created to produce high school diplomas, and we've established the fact that that's not enough anymore. And so now with collaborations through higher ed, we collaborate with AgriLife Extension because ours is an agricultural model, but with Texas Workforce Commission for a lot of the critical grants to bring those opportunities. I'm optimistic that the new funding formula will reward innovation and collaboration.
I also wanted to add, if there's something they're not talking about that you think should be on the table.
So I'll take a shot at it. I am a board member with a State Board of Educators certification. And so what I look at very closely is to ensure that we're putting forth legislation that puts highly qualified teachers in every classroom where public funds are being channeled to, because that's our responsibility. And the research is very clear. When a student is taught by an ineffective teacher, their regression is hard to make up. That's one. The second is I'm paying very close attention to literacy. And I believe, you know, I come from a family where we celebrated when we got our our library card. We actually thought it was a big thing, and looking back, I think it was the way my mother made us read. But she was the type that she'd say, I'm going to take a nap, and you all aren't required to take a nap, but you're going to stay on your beds and read. And so we had to read until the queen woke up. I mean, she woke up, right? And so I'm looking at literacy and the reality that access to everything is about being able to read. The other thing that I'm paying close attention to, and we're paying close attention to, is this whole idea of equity funding. Not equality, but equity. Some children, it takes more money to educate. It also is our commitment and our responsibility as a state to ensure that that part that props up our democracy in the state of Texas is not shortchanged. And so every legislative session should not be a debate of where we start, but what else can we do? And so I look at where are we going to end up with equity in funding. I also think, and I want to do a big shout out to the Texas Workforce Commission, and I'm just going to put a little context to it. We started an incredible high-end automotive body repair type of an academy because our local industry was calling for it. It took me $300,000 to get the infrastructure ready. That's not even the equipment, just to handle the high-end equipment. And we received a grant from Texas Workforce Commission to help push and propel us. And so I'm looking at whether CTE will be an area that will be focused on in funding as well, because at the end of the day, the strength of the economy is dependent on whether kids are community ready and career ready as well. And finally, the whole teacher salary. And so here's where I stand on that, and I think that I share that with many of my colleagues. When you are sitting at teacher pay at the low end, the last third nationwide, I think we have a responsibility to put the money in to bring everybody to a competitive rate nationwide. We want our kids to be competitive nationwide and worldwide. Our teachers' salary needs to be competitive to that end. And then we can have a conversation on merit-based. But I think we need to bring that whole element back to where it needs to be.
He said everything I wanted to say. But I'll put a different spin on it. Number one, I'm new. And so going in, we were going and facing some serious challenges as it related to budget. And so being in a district that's 89% low SES, as well as we just have some high concentration of poverty, the excitement in this legislative year is the fact that we have some challenges that are going to require some additional funding in order to address. One of the things going through, though, we recognize that teachers are the heart of everything that happens. As he stated, if you have an effective teacher, it impacts everything in our district. And so in a district where you can leave and literally go 2 blocks over and go work for another district or for another school system, then you've got to stay competitive. And last year, Aldine wasn't able to give salary increases. And so as a new superintendent, that's scary. If you don't have the talent in the classrooms, that's pretty scary. So I'm excited about the local control that we will have in order to hopefully be able to continue to be competitive and remain competitive and attract really good teachers. Additionally, literacy is very important for the same reasons that you kind of spoke to. Being a first-generation student, I ended up being raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather couldn't read. He had to sign his name with an X. And he used to tell me that if I could read, I can go anywhere. And that's what I say to the 67,000 kids in my care. We want to make sure that they're reading on grade level by 3rd grade. And so in order for that to happen, we have to have some additional resources because we do have additional challenges coming in. And so the fact that we can put that money towards pre-K, not just pre-K4, but we're piloting pre-K3, and we can do some additional things that I know are successful because we've done it at a smaller scale in Lufkin. We've seen our students who come out of our pre-K4 programs who wouldn't have qualified for GT or any other programs, but after they've come out, they've been able to qualify at kindergarten. So I know the power of pre-K. I also know the power of having additional time to learn, whether it's through extending the school year or extending the school day. And so that's going to require that we be able to compete at a different level and provide some different opportunities for our children as well, so we can do some of the things that Tom gets to do. And so I'm pretty excited about that. With the additional funding, we'll have that local option to do it as well. So when you think about teacher pay, you think about literacy, you think about the different opportunities to do school differently, I think that's going to if everything goes as planned, or House Bill 3 goes through, and I know that there's going to be some extensive conversations on Wednesday, I'm optimistic about what it's going to do for Aldine ISD.
And we'll round it out with you.
Oh gosh. Well, just number one, you know, Art said earlier he's thankful the legislature comes to work every day. I'm thankful it's 6 months every other year. Why? Because the number one thing I want the legislature to do is lay off the red tape and the bureaucracy. We need nothing else from them. It's just cut back on the red tape and the bureaucracy. I mean, we have a little bit less as a charter school, but man, it's gotten piled up over the last couple of years. And I know that districts, you know, actually can have the same freedom as we have. You can be called a school of innovation. But man, you want to do that as a district, those teachers unions, they just line up and they kill all those attempts to be able to operate with more of a free hand. All right, we got some in the audience. Good. Secondly, outcomes-based funding. If 6% of low-income kids in Travis County are making it to college, getting a college degree, that means 1 in 20. Well, that means you're basically spending $2.5 million per child who makes it to college, not even counting the cost of tuition. I mean, what if there was an incentive for getting more funding for every child from a low-income home who actually made it to and through a 4-year university? I think that would really change the incentives big time. And third, you know, I want charters to be treated the same as districts when it comes to funding. To me, it doesn't make any sense that when a child leaves IDEA and they go to art school in Harlingen ISD, which does happen, he's running a wonderful school system, and if we upset parents, then they're out the door and they're over to Art's place. About $2,000 of public funding just disappears. Well, it seems like since we've got the same outcomes we're responsible for, we should have the same funding. Like my thing is, look, if we're getting bad results, just shut us down. Otherwise, just let us educate students and focus on building great relationships with families.
It's time for questions. I don't know how this works. No. Okay.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I am a reporting fellow for the Texas Tribune, and I have a few questions that were submitted. So first question is, for everyone, are you willing to work with external partners, including charters, to operate your schools and meet students' needs in different ways? And what does that look like?
Definitely here. I may be an anomaly, I'm not sure, but I don't think I am, because I have colleagues who are willing to say that. I haven't sat down with you, but I've sat down with Mark from Yes Prep and others and talked about the best ways of educating students who need additional supports. In addition, just open to doing whatever is best in order to move our districts forward. We can't no longer be as competitive per se and not share ideas, because we have students' futures that are at stake. So it's important that we do sit down and we do have conversations, and we're actually looking at some of those right now. So I know for Aldine, we're definitely open to what others are doing. We do it all the time now as colleagues.
So I guess I'll answer, and then you'll have a chance to think about your answer. I will say this. That I think that the strength of a school system is the strength that can be defined in the partnerships they create. Last year we had a unique situation in our school system, in our community, where the firefighters needed more firefighters. And so we partnered with the city to create a firefighter academy where our students could be workforce ready when they left high school. We create externships, probably every CTE program has a practicum experience where they're giving back to the community. I am all about partnerships. I cannot do this work alone. We cannot do this work alone. And at the end of the day, the children in our school systems, and don't get this wrong, we have over 5 million children that are waiting for the adults to get it right. So partnerships, regardless of where they come, I think that we should be open to it. However, I put this caveat out. I ask a lot of questions when a partner wants to partner with me, because oftentimes it takes really deep dive into what they believe are true outcomes of their product. And so oftentimes what I find is that they want to hitch onto my wagon rather than I hitching onto theirs. And so I believe that a school community has a responsibility to protect the community brand as well. And so I look for meaningful partnerships that will advance the work that we're doing, We're very strategic, and I'm going to put a shout out to a book that we read collectively in our school community. It's Chess, Not Checkers. And it's all about being very strategic to advance your mission and what you're trying to accomplish. Because at the end of the day, it's about those children that are depending on us.
Well, we're trying to be open-minded and look at things differently from ever before. We're actually, TEA approached us about becoming a 501c3 nonprofit, and so we created Collegiate Edunation. And really the purpose of that is over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of lessons learned in the development of things like school-wide early college and STEM. You know, as I've matured over the years, and you can tell by looking, I'm getting pretty mature. But it's really about all students and not just students in Roscoe or our school district. And I'm a lot more expert in what not to do again than what to do, and willing to share those things with other people. And so we're actually working very collaboratively with schools with the intent of working with small and rural schools across the nation that are interested in our version of a community-based accountability system. We're not wanting to force that on anyone, but we're open to anyone that wants to learn from lessons learned and maybe expedite that process. And so there again, I don't care where funding comes or anything like that. There's always a need there, and if we can prove that we spend it wisely to elevate student outcomes. And so there again, I think we're in the age of collaboration and with a common goal of owning student outcomes beyond 12, beyond higher ed, into the workforce for all students.
We'll go to the next one.
We love partnerships.
Okay, next question is a question for Tom specifically. Tracy, who is a kindergarten teacher, says many young students in Texas are still getting suspended, and she asks, if you're a public school, why are you still suspending your youngest students?
Well, let's see. We have a expulsion rate which is half the state average, which I think is pretty darn good. And when it comes to suspensions, I mean, we've got 45,000 students. I want to make sure that our kindergarten teachers have every single tool in their box necessary to be able to get students to really, be motivated and perform well. That said, I mean, we don't suspend kindergarten or first grade or second grade students. It's just not true. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got, with a population as diverse as ours, we certainly have hope and inspiration and praise and pats on the back is necessary. But sometimes, loving students is really also about tough love and helping them realize that there are negative consequences for shoving somebody down on the playground or stuff like that. So yeah, I don't quite know where that question comes from, but I'll just use it as an opportunity to dispel some fake news out there.
This is another question for you, Tom, and I guess others can elaborate, but how do charters approach partnerships with ISDs collaboratively while appreciating the challenges and differences between a charter and an ISD school?
Well, to me, with Midland ISD, it's the best of both worlds. Midland ISD gets credit for the great test scores. They get to have choice within their system. They get to show parents that they are doing whatever it takes to provide high-quality educational outcomes. And there's so much values alignment. When I met with their superintendent and their school board, we were persuaded to do this because we felt like they were just aligned with our values as an organization. We attempted a partnership here in 2012 with Austin ISD. It was quite disastrous. All of the board members who voted to allow the partnership then drew opponents that were backed by the unions, and they either all chose not to run or they lost. And then the first action at the first meeting with the new board was to cancel the contract with Idea Public Schools and Austin ISD. At the end of the year, we had the highest performing school, middle school serving low-income students, but it didn't matter because it was just inconvenient for the adults who benefit from the way the structure is set up. So in my mind, I said, we are never, ever, ever, ever going to another partnership. But then I see in West Texas just a different attitude and a different yearning to create something positive for kids. And I said, hey, I think we're going to give it another shot. So I'll let you know how that goes in a couple of years. But right now, I think, things are looking fantastic.
And this is for everyone. Several people have mentioned the importance of having great teachers in the right place. What are your schools or districts doing to help teachers become great, and what programs would you like to see developed? And that's from Austin Batson.
So I'll start. I'm probably one of the few superintendents that walks around with contracts, and I offer people contracts. Just kidding. I don't do that. So a couple of things that we're doing that I think that sets us apart is that we take very serious who we're putting in every classroom. So we have a very robust system for selecting teachers before we put them in the classroom. Second is we have a 3-year induction program. And so we don't just turn the keys over, we monitor and help and support and coach those teachers for 3 years. And so then what does that do to a system like ours is that those teachers become very valuable to other school districts and they try and steal them, and that's okay, right? The reality is that I believe that every classroom in the state of Texas deserves a qualified and a highly trained teacher. Not just some classrooms, but all classrooms. I also think that one of the things that we're doing that I think is going to change the landscape of teacher prep. We have partnered with UTRGV to build a brand new campus in Harlingen ISD, thus bringing baccalaureate opportunities to our community that does not have it at this time. Economy and economics still get in the way from kids accessing schools. But in that brand new school, which will open August 2021, is partnering with our early college high school. We're very strategic in what pathways we would offer and back map into our school system. And so that school will actually house a teacher residency program that will require teachers, as they matriculate in that program in 9th grade, they will be doing a lot of on-the-job training. Our kids are getting practicum experiences. But the reality is that at the end of the cycle, they're going to go into the step-up program. And if you don't know a lot about the step-up program, it has been one of those programs that we've designed that has gotten nationwide attention. And it's a year-long residency program for incoming teachers. We redefined what student teaching was all about. So, because we realized that that is a big job market, we wanted to put our own kids in a pathway to be the effective teachers. And so we're super proud of our teacher residency program that will be coming on board here real quick. And so that's one way we're addressing that.
Part of the rural dilemma is, hiring and retaining teachers, and so we've implemented Texas Tech is one of our higher ed partners, and we're doing the Grow Your Own Teacher program. And realizing the reality is teachers are more likely to be satisfied to live in rural and remote areas if that's where they're from. And so I think I see a lot of value in that program and a lot of potential for satisfying some of that rural dilemma of the revolving door of teachers using rural jobs as a stepping stone to bigger and better things.
Is that partnership working? Are you seeing
it? It is. We're early in the stages of it, but we've had a long-standing partnership with Texas Tech on a lot of things, and I'm confident that this will be a profitable thing for our students.
Well, it's impossible for the quality of a school to exceed the quality of its teachers. I mean, my only job I've had has been an educator. I've taught right out of college. I've been in education the whole time. And we opened up schools, we're opening up schools in Fort Worth next year, and we opened up schools in Louisiana and El Paso this year. And we knew that those schools were only going to be exceptional if we had great teachers, which meant we had to find really exceptional people and then train them well. So we paid to relocate these people from El Paso, from Louisiana, to live in San Antonio, to live in the Rio Grande Valley, to be in our best classrooms with our very, very best teachers under our best principals, so they could then go back and seed those schools. So El Paso teachers, El Paso residents, people from the community who we were able to provide an entire, and I mean, you know how expensive that is? You gotta relocate them, you gotta pay their rent, you gotta relocate their families and stuff, but it's worth it. I mean, the only way that we're going to get better results in the state of Texas is if we start investing way more radically in the teacher force. I mean, it just, I need for people to start saying, I'm sorry, you're not cut out to be a teacher, but you could be a doctor maybe, or maybe an engineer. But teaching, that's way too hard for you. And that's not currently the way, but that's how we got to get in the state of Texas. And that's why we need a dramatic increase in teacher salaries, because right now we are losing the talent war. People who have the brains are not checking that teaching box enough. And we got to change that. We got to get people saying, who wants to be an investment banker? I want to teach second grade in the Rio Grande Valley. Like, yes! You know, where are the headhunters on college campuses at Harvard University? You got McKinsey, you got Bain, you got Facebook. I want to see Harlingen ISD. I want to see Roscoe. I want to see Aldine. I want to see IDEA right next. And that's not the situation, but we can get there. I really think we can get there.
Do we have time for one more, or are we done? We can do one more question.
Only if it's not for me.
I can't guarantee it.
This is for everyone. There has been a lot of talk about literacy and college readiness, but no mention of the materials being used. Are the textbook companies providing high quality content to support these goals?
No.
Anyone else?
Look, we actually partner with, I think, some wonderful, they happen to be nonprofits. Eureka Math does a wonderful job. Great Minds produces this amazing curriculum called Wit and Wisdom, which is all about novels and literature and literacy. So I think that the way that we've gotten away from the textbook process over the last couple of years was a good thing for the State Board of Education. And I think we're actually seeing a much higher quality, mostly not from the big publishers, but a lot from the nonprofit sector, doing a better job of giving teachers great stuff they can use in their classroom.
So, go ahead.
I don't personally think that numeracy and literacy are really curriculum issues, but maybe strategy. And one thing we piloted to address those things, and obviously in our model, we need folks that can read on grade level by grade 3. And so we implemented Montessori early childhood a couple of years ago, and we've seen such remarkable results there that we're in the process in 3 phases of phasing in grades 1 through 3, and then 4 through 6, and then 7 through 8, with a goal basically of higher numeracy and literacy scores by grade 8. And we think we've seen evidence, in our hypothesis is that that approach to numeracy and literacy will just produce a smarter 8th grader.
I guess that question lends itself to really illuminating the complexity of educational systems. And so a textbook is simply a resource, no different than a technology tool. There are some systems that introduce a technology tool and it's the most expensive pencil you have in the classroom, right? And so I think that it's how you utilize these resources to advance the work and the mission of your school system. And while there are some room for improvement in textbooks, I think that it's an opportunity to get better. And so I think it's simply a resource and not the answer. And so we have to be careful not to think that the textbook, just like high-stakes testing, is the answer. It's very complex, and it allows itself to be a conversation piece in and of itself.
Right. And just to echo what he said, it's a very complex process, and it's a very expensive opportunity as well, because it's a resource. And what we've done is we've actually halted the normal protocol for adopting a textbook, because literacy is really that important. When we say that it's important, we can't just look for that magic bullet and think it's going to be in the textbook. It's in the people, the leaders we have on our campuses, the teachers that we have in our classrooms, and then we can make informed decisions about how we move our district forward. And so it's ironic, I hope that question didn't come from Aldine, but it may have, because we halted the process because it's that important to us.
Great. I think we're out of time, but let's give a round of applause to these awesome superintendents. Thanks, guys.